We are continuing with the teachings of Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj from the book I Am That. Maharaj says, "Do try, and you will find in pain a joy which pleasure cannot yield, for the simple reason that acceptance of pain takes you much deeper than pleasure does. The personal self, by its very nature, is constantly pursuing pleasure and avoiding pain. The ending of this pattern is the ending of the self. The ending of the personal self with its desires and fears enables you to return to your real nature, the source of all happiness and peace." I think we all have experienced this. We all pursue pleasure and avoid pain. And in that avoidance, in that resistance, we actually create more suffering for ourselves. We try to create arrangements where we don't have to experience any pain. And sometimes that means avoiding certain situations, trying to change certain circumstances, cutting away from people. And sometimes it can happen in the form that we just withdraw into our own shell where we feel peaceful and secure. But that is just a temporary peace, temporary happiness. When we embrace pain, when we look at it for what it is, we get deeper insights in life than when we try to avoid pain. The whole suffering is based on avoidance of pain in life and pursuit of pleasure. Now, this does not mean that one should shun pleasure in the moment. If life brings you pleasure in the moment, enjoy that pleasure. It can be anything. It can be spending time with a loved one. It can be food. It can be sexual activity. It can be anything in the moment. But craving to repeat that pleasure in order to avoid pain creates this separation which causes conflict. So Maharaj says that the personal self, by its very nature, is constantly pursuing pleasure and avoiding pain. And ending of this pattern is the end of the separate self or the personal self. When one is completely open to whatever life brings in the moment, whether it is joy or it is pain, that is the spontaneous reaction of the biological organism and not the egocentric or self-centric chase for anything. It is not a chase for pursuit of happiness, and neither it is avoidance from the pain. Now I will read further. Maharaj says, "The perennial desire for pleasure is the reflection of the timeless harmony within. It is observable that one becomes self-conscious only when caught in the conflict between pleasure and pain, which demands choice and decision. It is the clash between desire and fear that causes anger, which is the great destroyer of sanity in life. Clash between desire and fear. Every desire is a future projection. My life should be perfect. My life should have the best relationship. My there should be financial security. Things should be stable and not unpredictable. That's what the mind says, that if things are stable, I will be fine. And it seeks security and stability. It tries to control life. And the mind, the ego mind, the separate self says that if I do this, then my life will be completely blissful and free of all sorrows and all troubles. If I get the best partner in life, if I get the best job, if my business grows, if I get to relocate in a different part of the world, if I get my guru's blessings, if I get to live in an ashram, it can be anything. The desire is all future oriented projection. It gives a false promise. The separate self, the mind, the ego mind gives a false promise that if I have these variables settled in my life, then I will be happy. If I experience no sickness, if my loved ones always stay close to me, then I will be happy. It imposes all these conditions. And if you see, they are all born out of a fear. So there is a clash between the desire and the fear. We want to be close to people, we want to be close to our loved ones, but at the same time, we fear that if we get too close, we will be hurt. That is a clash, that is a conflict. So we withdraw into our own shell, thinking that that will save us. But then we feel even more isolated and lonely, because then we are left with our own mind, which is the separate self, and we keep strengthening that shell every time we do that. It is the clash between desire and fear. And that Maharaj says, is the greatest destroyer of sanity in life. That is why people say one thing and do exactly the opposite of that. We all want harmonious relationships, but our actions are such that we actually end up destroying relationships. Because deep down we feel we are not worthy. We feel that we will be left alone, that we will be hurt. And we are so afraid of that, because all of that is a future projection. We are so afraid of it. We don't want to face it. We don't want to face the fact that it is not happening right now. All it is a movement in a future projection which comes out of the past conditioning. If this can be seen, if this can be witnessed, that all of this is a future projection that comes out of past conditioning, because my loved ones left me when I needed them in the past, when I was a child. All my future relationships will be like that. People will leave me. I will be alone for the rest of my life. Therefore, I have to do this, I have to do that. Therefore, let me break my own heart before somebody else breaks it. Don't we do that? Let me quit my job. Let me just resign from my job before I'm thrown out. Because I don't want to bear the humiliation of being thrown out of job, so let me resign. Now, the implication here is not to take actions like these. It doesn't mean that one cannot resign or that one cannot leave a relation or stay in a relationship. There is no implication here. It is just that we are trying to see these patterns where we are trying to avoid pain and pursue pleasure. We pursue pleasure, at the same time we try to cling on to ideas that say that convey that it is more secure to do this. But we are not willing to look at that which feels the hurt, which feels scared of being abandoned and alone. Maharaj says, when pain is accepted for what it is, a lesson and a warning, and deeply looked into and heeded, the separation between pain and pleasure breaks down. Both become experience, painful when resisted, joyful when accepted. Maharaj says that even pain teaches us a lot. In fact, pain and suffering teaches us more than pleasure in life. And it is, and he says that it is a reflection in the timeless harmony. The biggest changes that has happened in your life, whether you call it spiritual awakening or understanding, whatever you want to call it, it's up to you. Those changes have happened because you suffered. Now, this does not mean one have to deliberately invite suffering, but the thing is, life, the movement of life itself will bring this alternating cycle of pain and pleasure, which is suffering. When one accepts that this is the movement of life, and pleasure is something that can be looked into and deeply investigated, when one tries to reach the source of both pain and pleasure, it is then that one experiences true harmony. And the true harmony is simply acceptance of pain for what it is, not to resist it. In fact, when the resistance drops, even the pain drops at some point. So everything becomes an experience without labeling anything as good or bad, painful or pleasure. There is no need to label. Everything is just seen as one movement. And there is no notion of the separate self that is experiencing anything, but pure experiencing is happening. And finally, Maharaj says, he gives one pointer here which I think is very useful. He says, trace every action to its selfish motive and look at the motive till it dissolves. If you look at the cause of pain, for example, there may be a thought that I did something which hurt others. If you look at the root of it, you will realize that there was no one factor that was responsible for your action, for so perceived your action. But there were many forces that were acting on the human organism at that point which prompted that action. So there is no point in feeling guilt and remorse for something that was never your action in the first place. So when you trace the motive, you will see that there is no true cause to anything. And that is where you will reach the pure awareness beyond the separate self, which is nothing but a conceptual thought, which arises and subsides into the ocean of pure awareness. And it's nothing more. It is impermanent, it is not real. The real never changes, the real does not disappear. So investigate the motive of the so perceived self centered action and stay with that motive. So when you say that I did this, then go on to this I. Like, what is this I? What is the nature of this I? This is called introversion of the mind. And when the I reflects on itself, it cannot sustain and it merges back into the source of pure awareness. And that frees us from labeling so perceived our actions. So, all in all, one accepts the cycle of pain and pleasure as it happens. One accepts the pattern of pain and pleasure as it happens without resisting anything and experiencing everything as they happen, as experiences happen, not differentiating between pleasure and pain and seeing them as part of the one unitive movement. Thank you. I wish all of you a great